Today is going to be a day of variety. You should have had some Chinese music beforehand to celebrate the Chinese New Year and a chance to start anew if you're one that likes doing that, making resolutions to start anew. And the kirtan music there was supposed to have been the part that was in English that says, I want to know what love is. But you have a chance as we go forward, and the song after I speak, you will get the English version of original that inspired the kirtan version. So the key point is I want to know what love is. And today I want to talk about several things, but let me just begin with a little note. Besides that it's Chinese New Year, have you been watching the Olympics?
Yes.
Well, the part I've watched with greatest interest is the figure skating. And what did I see? Not only did I see an American come out with the gold medal, but I saw before that an American do an incredible performance, sit in the chair where the leader sits, and then as she waited for, I think it was 12 more to follow her, she was celebrating them. They weren't all Americans. They were a variety of nationalities. I remembered especially the Japanese. But she was celebrating for them. And at the end, when it came out that she had won the gold medal, she was there celebrating not just with her teammates, but with the other leaders, other countries' teams, a coming together. And that's part of what I want to talk about today is having hope. Hope is something very important. We began earlier with Steve leading you on a bit of a meditation journey to see that you can go places in your awareness that aren't necessarily around you physically. You know, did you see a unicorn? But today I invite you on another journey with me. But first I want to ask several questions, like, why are you here? Are you here because of the wonderful musicians? Are you here just wanting to meet friends like you love the Meet Your Neighbor portion? Is it something like you hope to hear an inspiring message? Is it something else? There are many things it could be. I've only scratched the surface in naming the possibilities. And I intend to close with another possibility that I think most of us are not ready to even imagine is possible. But at any rate, the question has been, why are you here? And kind of in the flavor of Pastor Susan's introduction, I am considered by many as being very creative and loving and seeking truth. Well, in my willingness to look for something different, to go for truth, I ask myself and others many questions. For instance, I was absent here for quite a while through a variety of factors. When I come back, what do we have? A rock here in the middle of the thing. What is it? Well, I just happened to learn with Jackie's assistance, it's called the lingam. And she got for me the special service that was done in honoring it, and it's being placed here. but it has meanings that I really relate to, but at the same time, I have other things I want to get into today. So I'll just mention other questions. Like you can't see it here, but this table has engraved on it in remembrance of me. That reminds me of the church I grew up in. Why is the door to the healing room open commonly during the service? Well, is it to remind you that there are chakras, but if you don't know what they are, what meaning do you give them? And so, a variety of things. But among the things I've learned, let's see, well, of course, hidden now with the screen down, but all but the new people will probably know on the back of the wall up there is the saying, I am love. You can correctly guess that that's one part I intend to talk about today. But before I get into that, let me acknowledge that I try to be careful with my words. How many of you identify yourselves as a seeker? I have in the past as well, but I've refined what I know now. What's a seeker do? A seeker's always looking, trying to find something. That not finding in that search can be frustrating. How about being a finder? But there are some other words that have importance. There are words that we need to be careful with using, like should. Don't should on yourself. Asking how. On this dimension, at least, how is often an impossible to answer question. Why? Just like how. To need, well, if you say you need something, that implies you should have it, but you don't. What if you don't have it, it means you don't need it? What's the message for you there? Do you really, really need it? And there's words like but. I used to write about all my writing in very long, complex sentences, and I would usually have a but in there. And now I understand and can see that putting a but in the sentence negates everything that came before it. So it's not making it a longer, more understandable sentence, it's contradicting itself. But want is like need. Do you really want it? And try. Do you remember what Yoda in Star Wars told us about try?
Don't try, just do.
Yeah. Jack, you have it great. It's don't try, do. But another phrase that I'm more recently aware of that ties into the topic today of I am love. But the phrase I try to totally avoid, now that I know more of what I am means, is I avoid saying I am sorry. It doesn't mean that I don't do things that I don't like the outcome for. But what do I say instead of I'm sorry? I apologize for, and then I explain my understanding of what I did wrong. But now let's move on, since I have so many thoughts I'd like to cover today. A while back, Steve and I in a business program were asked, and we were on separate computers and separate rooms in this Zoom meeting, what would we do if we were given $1 million with the only condition being we would have to give it to or use it for a very worthy cause? And worthy cause was somewhat ill-defined, But in this case, I discovered afterwards, both Steve and I gave it the same answer. Give you a moment now to think of what you might do with $1 million if you had to give it away to something special, something worthy. Turns out Steve and I both answered the question, we would give it here to First Spiritual Science Church with the understanding that that would help expand the facility, expand the offering, and just allow the message here to reach so many more people. Another example, we are active in the Love, Courage, Achievement Project, LCA. And one of the things there is being encouraged to look for a miracle every day. Well, my list has grown pretty large, and not so trivial things. I'll give you an example. You didn't get the full depth of it in our music there a little bit ago, but I think you will get more of it. But as I was going through on my computer, YouTube specifically, that's about the extent of my technical knowledge and usability. But at any rate, listening to various tunes. In the middle of it came up something that wasn't musical, not related to what I was looking for at all. What was it? It was a message that Gene Dixon had put together, I think it was around 1995, talking about what's going to come in the year 2026 and 2027. Well, if you look at my book, Hope, it's a message of having hope and what's going on in the world, what can happen. There, I was acknowledging that things can change very rapidly, although we think, some of us at least think, the world's going to that place that we prefer to not say the name for. But is it? In that Gene Dixon report, she reported in essence the same as what I predicted. She had a few more details in it, like talking about when things will happen and in steps. But turns out we agree with one another, but in the last year, in my failing to get the message from my book out as much as I had imagined it needed to get out, I was feeling like, well, maybe I've become just like the Jewish people and I'm still waiting for my Messiah to come. And that's kind of what I was predicting in the book. Or maybe it's the world. Some so-called Christians believe there has to be an Armageddon for Jesus to come again. Well, as you might guess, I do not believe that. And I believe Jesus is not coming down after an Armageddon battle, destroying the earth and coming down to save the few humans left. He does not, in my perspective, come down out of a cloud at all. His second coming is coming into our hearts, where we get to know who he is. And so with that and our wanting to get to know who he is, we have messages like this beautiful Valentine's Day card I got from Steve, talking about your love, not just a little, but a lot, not just today, but always, not just by anyone, but by the one who created you in his love. And then Steve added to its message. So again, love is important. But what does it really mean? And here things get more complicated. We have our phrase that is hidden from us now of I am love. I didn't feel like I fully understood it. So I've done some checking to try to understand it. And as referenced in my book, the English Bibles that we have, and probably similar in other languages that it's been translated into, their translation is not perfect. The words in the Bible of I am more correctly refer to acknowledging that Spirit, God, is within us. We have a soul, you might say, but what really does that mean? But at any rate, in most of the cases where you find I am used in the Bible, you will be better off inserting an is in there. Like I am is the way. Spirit within me is the way to the truth, is the way to whatever. Or so the interpretation could be Spirit is the way. I have some documentation from that I could share, but no time for that now. But let me introduce now another way of approaching this. Many of you know I have a technical background. There's some technical words that I don't come anywhere near to understanding the way I once did when I had almost a PhD in chemistry and master's in physics. But the words I want to focus on now is first saying that quantum has become almost a buzzword with many people, and that people will label things as quantum to tell you it's the newest and greatest and best, and based on new sciences and new understanding, often it's just the same thing renamed. For instance, I've found that quantum hypnotherapy, quantum regression hypnotherapy, is nothing more than what I've been doing for close to 20 years. And it started before then. I just got trained in it about 20 years ago, or actually a little more now. And so, but a fancy new name given to someone to try to get more of an audience. But going on, then quantum is one of the buzzwords, but another very important buzzword is fractal. If you look at the statement of beliefs that we just read earlier today, there's several statements in there about what God is, and one towards the end comes a little closer to my topic today of saying we are a cell in the God. We are a cell or a part of God. Well, that's what a fractal is. Another example for that new technology, what is a fractal? It's a structure where, as you look at it in the smallest part to the biggest part, it has a similar structure. You know, you're probably aware of atoms having a nucleus and electrons rotating around it. Well, on a much, much larger scale, our solar system here with the sun is like that. But our galaxy is like that. Our universe is filled with many galaxies at all an expanding scale. But to give you more of an appreciation for what that is, just imagine now, let's go to gaming, and imagine playing tic-tac-toe. Basically, it has 9 squares in it, and you try to go diagonal or across 3 things in a row. But how many squares are there? Most people answer oh, there's 9 things there where a X or a 0 could go. But what about the whole big thing? It's a square. What about if you take each of the corners and go kind of 2 squares long and wide, you get from each corner 4 more squares, and you keep counting. So now imagine you start doing the same thing with a checkerboard or a chessboard. You get a whole lot more squares in there as you discover, you have so many across in a row, so many down in the vertical column, but you can go 2 by 2 for a square, or you can go the whole thing as a square, and that's kind of what a fractal is. Or it's not as commonly seen, but most of you have heard of holograms, and a hologram is something where if you have a hologram object and you break it, say you break a little piece off, that little piece still has the whole picture there, the whole structure there. The big piece still has the whole structure there. And so this concept is getting towards we are all a part of God, and we're both an individualized expression of God as God is trying to learn what He is, who He is, through this unique identity that each of us has. But there's also the whole. So we're a part, but also a whole. And that's W-H-O-L-E, not W, or, yeah, not H-O-L-E, but it has that W. It's the full thing. So we are all portions of God. And so going along with that, some of these concepts, the sciences, the mathematics have gone a long ways into, since Einstein, who had a lot of wisdom, and not just science, but understanding he was not limited to science, and he was tied in with metaphysical beliefs as well. But he identified things as there's more to it, but he couldn't understand how to put everything together. So the sciences have been searching for what they call the grand unification theory. How do we explain that the thoughts I'm sharing today don't travel like the distance to the sun, and the speed of light, as many would believe, is the fastest it can go? That takes about 8 minutes. Well, the thoughts that you share, the thoughts that I share, the words that I share are basically transversing the whole universe virtually instantly, vastly exceeding the speed of light. There's so much there. But the beauty in all of this is science is now leading the understanding. Not so much those of us who are in our bodies, we stay stuck with our, what I used to think of in the technical world and instrumentation, EMI is electromagnetic interference. Well, now the meaning for me is it's the ego mental identity. Ego mental identity. And it can't comprehend things like I can be, you can be a part of God, but God is infinite. And so, like the fractals and the mathematics explaining it can show and that's actually understandable. It's just our minds, our ego, our mental can't comprehend that yet. And so until we have a experience that shows us more, and I just happen to have been fortunate that I've experienced so many things, way too much to share today. But going back to the simple thing, though, an analogy, you're at an ocean. You see waves, and above the waves are little bitty drops mist of the ocean. And it's literally true, that little drop is still the ocean. And the whole body of water there is the ocean. And so, whatever analogy you can use to start seeing that we are just a part of a big, that we are individualized expressions of God. And in so, it doesn't mean we are less than God, although we do want to be careful in using that language. If you go around saying, you're God, some people will want to fit you for a special white jacket. I had a client once who had been institutionalized much of her life, and she was 60 years old at the time, because of so-called schizophrenia. What did she have instead? She just told the psychology world, the psychiatrist and all, that she had this vision and heard things. Well, what she had the communication with was that she had, in utero, had a twin, and they remained in contact. And I had the privilege of working with the two of them, and yes, the two of them, one in spirit, one in physical body, for quite a while to work out their entanglement. But at any rate, my point here is, in my book, I shared that I have had a conversation with Jesus. That was in May of 2024. I spent the rest of that year getting the book out. Here, we go much closer to acknowledging that. We have healers, readers here, to help us get into touch with that spirit, that part of ourselves. But what part do they play? I hope that you use them to help you get into touch with things, not feeling like what they say is true. What I teach now is you are doing the right thing where you are. You are where you are for a reason. The tragedies I've experienced have all helped bring me to where I am. But what more is capable? A simple little book, 6 volumes this size, been published, called The Life and Teachings of the Masters of the Far East. I first got a hold of these books, or at least volume 1 through 5, back in the 70s. Read them and thought, wow, how amazing. What happens in these books? These were a group, I think it was around a dozen to 18 Americans, went to the Far East, to India and other parts of Asia, to explore what was being taught there. What did they learn? They learned some incredible things, saw some incredible things. The first 5 books were originally published in 1935, so quite a while after the expeditions that covered several years. But what did they learn? They learned that the masters, and we have pictures of many of them out in the foyer, are all together. And they share. And they are alive. They exist. And they come and teach people. And these Americans that were more technical, academic people, not religious, but they came to see and experience. Many of the masters appearing to these in the Far East in the 1890s. How have we progressed? I think not as much as I would have hoped. We still have things like the picture in the back illustrating Jesus. Here's a common magazine that's been circulated. I found it in one of the grocery store magazine racks. Says, Jesus, who do you say that he is? Well, who really is it? Are you ready to meet Jesus? I have a question for you. Would you rather encounter the person looking like the one in the foyer, the one on my magazine, or would you feel more attraction to this individual? That's the type of person I got acquainted with. Nothing but love, nothing but caring, no condemnation, just appreciation and support. And so that's what I'm pushing for us all to experience now. And the only thing that keeps us from experiencing not just this picture here, but Jesus being here, is that can we believe it's possible? That seems like pretty far-fetched to most of us. But if I can write a book with him, anything's possible. And so what I would suggest here now is just in going forward, allow yourself to expand. Allow yourself to see, as with Steve, you could have been seeing a unicorn. You could have been experiencing a unicorn. But where do you need to go? Have you lost hope? Well, as Jana Stanfield said in her song, the world may need more than I can give to it, but it needs us to do all that we can for it. And if we each individually do all that we can to live lives knowing that we are love, and that love is the thing that everything is. Fear has no power. Hate has no power. They all will eventually be gone, and it can be very quickly. But love is what endures. And all we have to do is to allow ourselves to feel ourselves doing that. At that writing retreat where I wrote that book, I had all kind of reasons why I couldn't do it. I just went up to this business writing retreat, told you will encounter a guide to guide you into learning more. When I realized my guide was Jesus, I kept writing as the taskmasters running the retreat wanted me to do, even though usually I can't read my writing if it's only 5 words a minute. And we were being pushed to have to write 20 words a minute. It ended up I could read what I had written. And just amazing things can happen. And so we just have to believe it's possible. And we have to be willing to go forward and take action. Society needs us to be all that we can be as love now. So what do? I'm out at the No Kings rally. I donate what little I can to some causes. I try to encourage people. I try to get the story of the book out. I try to share here and wherever else I can. So join me in helping get the message out that we are fractals of love, and love is all there is. So, thank you.